Number 10. Dark Multiverse Superman. Now, I don't know if this is laziness, but the Dark Universe version of Superman doesn't really get much justification as to why his mind snapped and he killed millions of people, his own family, and most of the other superheroes. The Batman of this universe, after seeing this Superman kill his own wife, and after he cuts off Batman's arm, decides that this guy just ain't it. And he transformed himself into a doomsday Batman hybrid called the Devastator, and smashed down this Superman, poisoned him, and impaled him on spikes. A quick evil Superman story, but it was in service of an amazing Batman story. Number 9. Lex Luthor Superman. Okay, this evil Superman isn't technically Superman, but when Superman and Doomsday are both killed by each other, Earth Prime's Lex Luthor returns to Earth after getting bored of being the new Darkseid on Apokolips, and learns of Superman's demise. Lex Luthor, with the help of a superpowered armor, steps in and makes himself the new Superman. I mean, not really Lex, but sure, we'll just give this one to you. Now, he had some good intentions, but it's Lex Luthor. He wasn't exactly the best person for the job. After having multiple falling outs with the new real Superman, pre-Flashpoint Clark Kent, he gave up the title of Superman and started acting as an independent hero, and sometimes a villain. Number 8. Parallax Superman. In this story, Parallax, the physical embodiment of fear, took over the body of Kal-El, making him submit to Laxi by torturing children, and uses this Kryptonian's powers to confront Sinestro, who traps the cocky super entity and teleports him to the caves of Quard, where Sinestro tries to take Parallax out of Superman's body for his own evil plans. But surprise! Parallax has already escaped Superman's body, and a battle ensues between Sinestro and Parallax, leading to the surface of Quard. Superman escapes from the caves, and in a last-ditch attempt to defeat the entity, steals Sinestro's power ring and coerces Parallax to swallow his super butt whole. Superman is a clever guy though. He traps Parallax inside the power ring and the day is saved. Gosh, a lot of plot twists there.
Number 7. Bizarro. Bizarro was a pretty wild idea for a character if you ask me. Bizarro is the clone of Superman, or at least sometimes he is. At other times he's actually his own character from a completely different planet. So it kinda depends on which version of Bizarro we're talking about. In many versions of Bizarro's story, as there have been many versions of this character, even some sharing the same continuity, he is a clone of Superman created by Lex Luthor. But in many cases the cloning or duplicating process basically goes awry, resulting in a sort of reverse Superman. Instead of him having heat vision, he has freezing vision and heat breath. He thinks bad is good and good is bad, so he just ends up being a bad guy. He also is often not too bright. There's even been a version of Bizarro that was created by the Joker, and more recently there was an incomplete clone version of him that was created by Lex but actually became super intelligent. Number 6. Cyborg Superman. What if Superman was the Terminator? That's basically what this version of Superman is. He comes to us from the reign of Superman and is actually Hank Henshaw. Well, Hank Henshaw's brain inside a cyborg more specifically. After Hank's brain is transferred to the cyborg, he decides to become Superman, cause why not? His plan is to use the alias of Superman in order to destroy Metropolis with a nuclear missile. So a little more insidious than Terminator really, who is only targeting one person, Sarah Connor. Number 5. Omni-Man. Omni-Man is a complex character in the Invincible universe. He is both a hero and a villain, and sometimes more of an anti-hero. He is the father of Mark Grayson, the protagonist of the story, also known as the hero Invincible. While there have been times he fought against Mark, he has also fought alongside him, to be honest. In season 1 of the animated series based on the Invincible comic book series, Omni-Man takes on and defeats single-handedly the Guardians of the Globe. Initially, he told his son that he and his race of superpowered beings, the Viltrumites, were heroes who traveled the universe to protect worlds. However, it's later revealed that this was a lie. Instead, the Viltrumites are basically a people who travel the universe looking for worlds to conquer, which was also Omni-Man, aka Nolan Grayson's objective on Earth. The people of Earth can either surrender and live under Viltrumite rule, or can resist and be destroyed. That's the way he sees it. Later on in the comic series, however, Omni-Man would go on to become the new Emperor of Viltrum. He uses his power and influence to protect the people of Earth against other Viltrumites who would seek to harm it. So he might seem like a really bad guy, but there's a lot going on with Nolan. Number 4. Hyperion. Hyperion basically serves to act as a commentary on Superman. Sure, he's a Marvel ripoff, but that's kind of the whole point of his character. Marvel created Hyperion so they could basically examine Superman as a character, and what it means to have a hero who is literally like a god on Earth. The whole point of him is his similarity and also his subtle differences to Supes. Hyperion is often part of a team called the Squadron Supreme, or depending on the version, sometimes even the Squadron Supreme of America. Now, that definitely feels similar to the Justice League or the Justice League of America, no? Hyperion is also known as Marcus Milton. Typically, his origin is that he was an alien who was sent to Earth as a baby. Even more familiar. And not only that, but Hyperion, who can fly, is super strong and super durable, also is apparently the last known survivor of an eternal alien race whose planet died. His origin and character have Superman written basically all over it. He became one of his Earth's premier superheroes and ended up joining the Squadron Supreme. At least that is one of his main origin stories. But also, different to Superman, he's kind of a jerk. Number 3. Ultraman. This evil version of Superman may not be using his powers for good, but other than that huge con, he has some pretty big pros. Superman's weaknesses becoming his strengths being, one of the big ones. Kal-El is weakened by kryptonite, but for Ultraman, it actually only makes him stronger. Also, DC gave Superman a weakness to magic because otherwise he'd be too OP, right? Well, Ultraman is just that much more OP because he doesn't have this weakness either. He actually has murdered many magic-using gods on his own Earth, so he's simply better for capability. Sure, the sun weakens him, but he can still beat Superman any night of the week. As long as you don't mind the evil part, this Superman is actually very evil, but also very OP. You don't mind the evil part, do you? We're all a little bored of Superman's goody two-shoes act, right? And if you are, then Ultraman is the villain for you. Number 2. Injustice. This Superman is a lot darker than the OG, and honestly, I kind of love that about him. You know me, the closer that a superhero is to walking the line of super villainy, or is just, basically a supervillain, I like supervillains, the more into them I tend to be. Let's not examine too closely what that says about my psyche, let's just keep going. The Injustice games have great alternate versions of almost every favorite DC character out there. Superman's story and the story of the game itself is set into motion after Joker tricks him into believing Lois is Doomsday, which causes her death and the death of Superman and Lois's unborn child. This plus the destruction of Metropolis makes Superman pretty much just lose it. He kills the Joker and sets out to bring about world peace through basically world domination. At the end of the game, if you choose him to win against Batman, he even uses Brainiac technology to control Bruce's mind. Would you want to live in a peaceful, Superman-controlled world? I mean, it'd be peaceful, but free will? Free will. Number 1. Homelander. Talk about commentaries on Superman. Homelander is also definitely one of those, but a much more crass commentary, I would say, especially if we're talking about, the comics. This version of Superman is not really a hero, but instead is poised in Garth Ennis's comic series The Boys as the main antagonist, although in reality there are some bigger bads than him, but still, in general he is known to be one of the most vile of the supes in the comics. The Boys imagines a harsh, brutal world that offers what it suggests is a more realistic take on what superpowered humans would be like, the actual worst. These heroes pretend to save the day putting on big smiles, while really many of them are addicts, murderers, and often worse criminals than those they fight against, because they have superpowers, they can do anything they want. Homelander can fly, is invulnerable, insanely strong and fast, and has his own version of heat vision. He's also the leader of the Seven, the premier superhero team from Vought, which, yeah, that would suck to live in that world because he's the worst and he's the leader of the main superhero team. Vought is the company that created superheroes and also works to make money off their brands, marketing them as big saviors and profiting for it while covering up, all the terrible things that they actually do to preserve and safeguard those profits and their business.
Number 10. Age of X Avengers. In the Age of X storyline, the mutant population were feared, and after a phoenix-shaped explosion leveled Albany, the culling of the mutants began. In response to this, the mutant Magneto used his powers to literally steal several buildings from New York and form Fortress X, a safe haven for mutant kind. This led to the creation of a team of non-mutant heroes by General Frank Castle and led by Captain America to hunt down this resistance of mutants. The team was made up of Captain America, Ghost Rider, who was killed prior to the actual assault on Fortress X, the Hulk, Invisible Woman, Redback, who is this universe's Jessica Drew, and Iron Man / Steel Corps. While the team murdered a lot of mutants, Cap eventually called them off to instead defend the mutants, which activated Steel Corps' Code Omega, causing them to take him out. There was also Plan B, which was the 2 megaton chemical that was carried by the Hulk. Luckily, the mutant population survived this twisted Avenger team.
Number 9. Ultimate Avengers. Not to be confused with the Ultimates, who are very much their own thing. This team of Avengers is actually called the Avengers, but is not the Avengers equivalent from the 1610 Ultimate Universe. Are you confused yet? Basically, in the Ultimate Universe, the Avengers team that we know and love from 616 is a little different, including in name. On Earth 1610, the Earth's mightiest heroes go by the name of the Ultimates and are pretty buddy-buddy with S.H.I.E.L.D. and its director Nick Fury. However, there is a team in this universe that uses the Avengers moniker, but they are quite different from the Avengers we know from Earth 616. On 1610, the Avengers team is more like DC's Suicide Squad. The team is made up of characters who are seen as more disposable by S.H.I.E.L.D. and who are more anti-heroes or just straight up villains. They are a black ops team who is usually brought on for less publicly marketable missions and jobs.
Number 8. Deathlock Nation. On Earth 11045, the superhumans grew out of control. They began to take the law into their own hands, more and more, acting as judge, jury, and executioner. This led to popular support from the people for Operation Deathlock. Operation Deathlock was a plan conceived by Weapon Infinity of the Weapons Plus breeding facility called the World to convert all superhumans into Deathlocks. The project began small with a few normal human Deathlocks, and then those Deathlocks targeted specific heroes who were killed and then converted into super Deathlocks. No hero could stand for long, and soon all superheroes were converted into mindless police robots, which actually resulted in a utopia. Eventually, these Deathlocks began spreading into other timelines and realities, only to be stopped by Apocalypse. This eventually led a team composed of Deathlock, Captain America, Cyclops, Spider-Man, Elektra, Hawkeye, and the Thing to come into conflict with Earth 616. Number 7. Hank Henshaw. Hanky Boy here was already a villain of Superman's from past stories, but when Superman was killed by Doomsday, Hank, unable to directly get revenge against Superman himself, decided to attack his reputation instead. Come on, man. He's already dead. Not cool, dude. Not cool. After creating a Kryptonian cyborg body using the birthing matrix, he took on the guise of Supes and went about destroying Superman's memorial plaque. Then he saved the president to get clout so the president would recognize him as the real Superman. Eventually, he and Mongol destroyed Coast City, and the real reborn Superman, with the help of others, defeated and discredited him. At least he looked really cool. Number 6. Overman. Now this version of our favorite red and blue man didn't end up in Kansas when he was ejected from Krypton. No. This Kal-El found himself in Sudetenland, Germany in 1938 and was acquired by a certain mustached fascist. With Kal and Kryptonian tech, the Reich were obviously able to win World War II and rule over the entire planet. Later, Overman would become disgusted with the stashed man when the Holocaust had been finalized, although he still served the state. It's kind of a weird set of morals there, dude. Eventually, he was cloned and received a love in the form of Overgirl, but after her death, he was completely heartbroken, and he supplied information to the freedom fighters who long opposed the fascists, which eventually led to the death of the new Reichman, the Justice League, and the city of Metropolis. With the grief of all these losses holding him down, he was overthrown by his friend. Damn. Kinda hard to feel bad for him though. Number 5. Injustice Superman. The Superman of the Injustice universe has pretty much the same history as the baseline Superman, but when the Joker kidnaps the pregnant Lois Lane, it lures Superman into a trap of fear gas. In his poisoned state, Superman hallucinates his true love as the villain Doomsday and instantly attacks, flying Lois and his unborn child into space, killing them, and inadvertently causing a nuclear bomb to destroy his city, Metropolis. After suddenly losing his city, wife, and baby, Superman goes into an honestly understandable rage. bursting into the interrogation room where Batman is learning the true intentions of the Joker, and plunges his super fist right through the guy's chest. Following these events, Superman takes control of the Earth and rules it as a tyrant. Fortunately, Batman forms an insurgency to try and beat this corrupted Superman, eventually enlisting the aid of another Earth's Justice League, and I guess technically whoever plays the tied-in video game, to defeat him and save the day. Number 4. Brutal. Brutal is a cloned version of Superman, but unlike a certain bizarre version of Superman, who we will talk about later, don't worry, this duplication was done by none other than Darkseid himself. He raised the resulting clone into a soldier, nay, a weapon, and unleashed him on the superheroes of Earth 2, along with Steppenwolf and the other Hunger Dogs, but they don't really matter. When Steppenwolf tried to subvert his master Darkseid and take Earth as his own, brutally murders him with his heat vision, establishing his devotion to his Lord Darkseid. Let me make my intentions clear. Hail Darkseid! Which is just a sweet line after you murdered a general of Darkseid. The Earth became lost to Darkseid's minions, and eventually, after a lot of other stuff, Kal-Zod, Earth 2's Superman, faced Brutal in combat, and after a furious battle, showed that Brutal was just an imitation, and a cheap one at that, as his body began to deteriorate, and the day was saved. Again. Hey guys, just wanted to say a quick thanks for watching. We hope you're enjoying the video. If you are, why not head on over to that pretty little subscribe button and give us a follow and a like. You guys are the reason we can even be here in the first place. Love you! Okay, on to the top 3. Number 3. Super Doom. On Earth 45, Lois Lane, Jimmy Olsen, and Clark Kent are scientists instead of reporters, and they use their smarts to build a machine that can turn thoughts into reality, which, I mean, how the heck did they think that was a good idea? I can think of 10 things right now that should never become reality. Anyways, using the aforementioned thought-to-form machine, they try to create a being called Superman, who would be capable of doing amazing things and who could save worlds. But when they are forced to sell their idea to Overcorp, they decide to rebrand and end up creating a monstrosity. Superman, the Last Night of Tomorrow, or Super Doom. With a corporate fueled agenda of destroying all competition, Super Doom quickly becomes the strongest super being on its own planet, and then enters the bleed space to murder all other versions of Superman. Of course, bad guys never win forever, so after defeating and devouring multiple different Supermen of multiple different Earths, he was stopped by the Superman and Lex Luthor of Earth 22, who stranded him between universes. He's since been used in a few other storylines and remains one of the most formidable evil versions of Superman to this day. I mean, he didn't even die. Number 2. Bizarro. When Lex Luthor gets the plans for a device called the Duplicator Ray, he modifies the device and uses it to try and create a clone of Superman, who will follow his every order without question. But since our Lex can't seem to do anything right, the resulting doppelganger is an unintelligent, unpredictable, backwards version of Superman, eventually known as Bizarro. Bizarro is a main villain for Superman, appearing in many stories, and I'm so glad because, gosh, he's just so fun to see! Eventually, Bizarro gets a case of the blues and longs for love, and gets the hots for Lois Lane. Lois isn't really interested, but being the great gal that she is, she uses the Duplicator Ray on herself, creating a Bizarro Lois Lane. And the two eventually leave Earth to settle another Earth-like planet they fittingly name Bizarro World. Or, and forgive me here, Hetre, which is Earth backwards, which they populate with more and more duplicates of themselves. But don't worry! They have pretty rock necklaces that say Bizarro and Bizarro Lois 1, so we don't get confused. Number 1. Ultraman. In the universe of Earth 3, things are a little turned upside down. Instead of being driven by the morals of good versus evil, the people of this universe are inspired by strength above all else. I can't really relate. Born on a dying Krypton where Kryptonians evolved to be empowered by green kryptonite to a maniacal version of Jor-El aptly named Jor-Il, baby Kal-Il is jettisoned off to Earth. But instead of the classic morals, he's instead inspired by his father to become the strongest possible being with absolutely no weaknesses in himself and the others around him. When Kal lands on the farm of Johnny and Martha Kent, he uses pieces of green kryptonite to empower himself and forces the dysfunctional couple to be his parents until the totally mature age of 7, when he murders them both and sets the farm ablaze. Eventually, this self-proclaimed Ultraman murders the President of the United States of America and takes control of the world, creating the crime syndicate of America with other evil alternate versions of classic characters, including an evil Wonder Woman, Superwoman, and evil version of Batman, Owlman, who have a pretty toxic love triangle. Number 10, Joe Fixit. I think he looks just downright adorable in that suit, but his actions are definitely not adorable. Joe Fixit is essentially the Grey Hulk, which is a weaker, darker Hulk persona that resides inside Bruce's head. Joe is a trickster. He's manipulative, doesn't really care for others. He can drive a car. He has a twin pair of Tommy guns. Oh, and did I mention the suit because he wears a suit? Joe Fixit Hulk took up a job as an enforcer at a casino, which is where all of this mafioso business came from. And he stayed this way for several months, not reverting back into Bruce for the duration of this period. He even had a relationship at this time, like a whole relationship that blossomed and peaked and ended. Mr. Fixit came to an end eventually thanks to the magia. Forget about it though, we're moving on to number 9. Number 9, War Hulk. This version of Hulk came about when the mutant apocalypse promised the Hulk he would remove a piece of shrapnel that was in his brain if he became his War, one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. This meant that Hulk would be imbued with the power of the Celestials. That's a lot of power! As War, Hulk faced off against both the Absorbing Man and Juggernaut. But what he didn't know was that these two were accompanied by Rick and Janice Jones, Bruce's best and longtime friends. As Hulk was about to kill Juggernaut and the Absorbing Man, Rick jumped in the way, and Hulk got Rick instead, crippling him. The image of his friend, hurt by his own actions, caused Hulk to break of Apocalypse's influence and run away, ashamed of his actions. Number 8, Claw. Claw, which is Hulk backwards, very creative, is basically what happens when the Hulk goes Hulk. He is another one of the evil personalities inside Hulk's head. This version of Hulk has black skin with glowing red scars. He has red demonic eyes, white hair, and big talons. Claw emerges when Hulk reaches a sufficient level of rage, meaning he is more powerful than any other rage-boosted version of the Green Hulk, which is insane if you know about a certain world-breaking version of the character. This version of Hulk is usually suppressed and has only shown up a few times, and not for very long, I might add. He appeared in the Axis storyline where heroes and villains had their moralities switched. Hulk isn't exactly always a good guy, sometimes letting his rage hurt good and bad guys. But since Claw is his opposite, he lets his rage hurt and maim everyone, good and bad, putting even the villains on alert. Look, he just wants to bathe in the blood of the innocents. That's reasonable, right?
Number 7, Cadaverous' Avengers. Cadaverous' Avengers were part machine, part man, and all influenced by the villainous Cadaverous. They show up in whatever alternate world J.J. Abrams and his son Henry Abrams' Spider-Man series is relegated to. I don't think it has an official number yet. It does have a temporary reality number though. This team seemed hell-bent on getting revenge on Iron Man, the only surviving Avenger left in this world. Well, I guess Peter was still alive at this point, and I mean, he's normally a part of the Avengers team, at least at some point, but I mean, in terms of the standard Avengers cast, we've all come to familiarize ourselves with through various forms of media, including the films. I mean, especially the films in this case, just based on the roster. These villainous corpse versions of the former heroes face off against the old Iron Man, Ironheart, Spider-Man's son Ben Parker, and his powerless but enthusiastic friend and love interest, Faye Ito. Or is it Ito Faye? Needless to say, these evil counterparts at least weren't in control of themselves, but instead were being influenced by Cadaverous to fight against their former friend and colleague with the use of old Stark Tech neurochips.
Number 6. The Gatherers. The Gatherers are a team of former Avengers of different alternate realities who survived their world's destruction, tricked by an alternate reality Black Knight named Proctor into believing that their world's Circes were to blame. Proctor united them together and gave them a single enemy, the Circe of Earth 616. The team consisted of alternate reality versions of Proctor, Rick Jones, the Thing or Korg, Swordsman, Black Panther, and the Vision, as well as some unknown original villains. But for them to carry out their vengeance, each member had to kill their Earth 616 counterpart within a certain amount of time, or they would die from cellular breakdown. What the members of the Gatherers did not know is that their leader, Proctor, was responsible for the destruction of each world they are from, as he drove that world's Circe into madness, causing her to lash out and destroy everything around her, all because of a bad breakup. Damn, dude!
Number 5. Android Ultimates. The Android Ultimates come from Ultimates 3. They make their first appearance in issue number 4 of the Ultimates 3 series. This is where we first learn that these Ultimates aren't really the Ultimates at all, but replacements built by Ultron to act just like them. His plan is to use the team of robotic hero impersonators to destroy man and help the machines of the world rise up. Really all machines too. There's a weird part where they're talking about like, we as machines are just seen as these tools. Us toasters, we will unite. It's like very strange. Of course, the Ultimates themselves will have a few things to say about that whole plan. Ultron styles himself after his father Ant-Man, but he and his team wouldn't make it past the next issue. It would later be revealed that their leader Ultron wasn't actually fully in control, but instead was being puppeted by Doctor Doom. So many reveals where people are actually being controlled by someone else.
Number 4. Undead Avengers. The living are not welcome on Earth 666, and the world is only consisting purely of the dead, undead, or supernatural beings. Vampires, werewolves, mummies, and more all exist here, and each group is divided into separate factions. But don't fear, the greatest heroes from across these groups are assembled together to protect this world. They are the Undead Avengers. This team is so cool. A Captain America who never recovered from being a werewolf, a part spider Natasha Romanoff, a devil Daredevil, a mummified Thor the Accursed who wields the backwards Mjolnir that casts black anti-magic energy, Vampire Wolverine, Hawkeye, Franken Castle? I mean, come on. These guys come into conflict with Captain Britain when trying to defend the Orb of Necromancy in order for them to spread undeath across all of reality, and they first appear in Secret Avengers number 33.
Number 3. Dark Avengers. The Dark Avengers technically hail from Earth 616, but they are a completely alternate team when it comes to their roster and in general their backstory and motives. Well, that is, in a way, the Dark Avengers do attempt to do good, but they are just all approaching it from a more villainous side. And many of the team members don't do good for the sake of doing good, but have their own ulterior motives. So can we really call that good? That's a philosophical question for you. The Dark Avengers were introduced when Norman Osborn was given reign over the heroic team after he'd been declared a hero for killing the Skrull Queen Veronki. Aside from getting to build his own Avengers team, which would replace the previous one, S.H.I.E.L.D. had been disbanded and Osborn was allowed to create his own organization to replace it, using the acronym HAMMER, which really doesn't stand for anything. Osborn just thought it sounded cool, so that's not really an acronym, it's just capitalized letters at that point. He pulled together his own Avengers team, which publication-wise became known as the Dark Avengers, composed of various Marvel villains, anti-heroes, and misled heroes in some cases, or heroes who were just like really lost at the time, who Osborn united when the standard Avengers hero members refused to join his team. He did try though. He was like, hey Carol, come be on this team. She was like, hell no.
Number 2. Zombie Galacti. I think most of us are familiar with Earth 2149, which is the home of the Marvel Zombie storyline. Here, a separate reality zombie-infected sentry was sent by his Earth's Watcher. The Avengers were the first on the scene and quickly died or were infected, with the rest of the population falling quickly afterwards. Once the Herald of Galactus, the Silver Surfer, showed up to announce the arrival of Galactus, he was consumed by Hulk, Wolverine, Spider-Man, Iron Man, Giant Man, Power Man, and Captain America, who absorbed his powers and used it to toast other zombies to improve their flavor. Gordon Ramsay would not approve. The Zombie Galacti used the machine to unite their power cosmic to take down Galactus, and after fighting their zombie villains, consumed and absorbed his power too, using it to spread the infection throughout the whole of their universe.
Number 1. Revengers. The Cancerverse Avengers, known as the Revengers, hail from a reality where the world was turned upside down by the fact that death was defeated. I know, how can you kill death? Well, apparently when you make deals with elder god-like beings, anything is possible, like what happened here. In a bid to save Captain Marvel from life-threatening cancer, a deal was struck with the Many-Angled Ones. As a result, Death ended up dead, which actually resulted in the whole universe becoming a perverted version of itself. You'd think without Death around, the universe would become like a paradise. But no. It became rank with disease that spread and basically couldn't die, becoming known as the Cancerverse. All the heroes who remained here were made to serve the Many-Angled Ones, becoming their loyal servants and attempting to invade other universes eventually and conquer them in the name of their Lovecraftian horror-esque gods, Avengers included. or Revengers included.
Alright, at number 10 we have the very silly but nonetheless evil Super Enemies. In the 1970s animated TV show Super Friends, there's an episode in 1979 called Universe of Evil, where Superman travels to an alternate universe to meet the evil counterparts to the Super Friends, very creatively named the Super Enemies. And the team is made up of all those bad guys we've all known so well and grown up with. You know, like Aquaman with an eye patch, and tinted red Batman, and oh, who could forget the iconic alien monkey Gleek. What a trailblazing team of supervillains they were. But as much as I roast them, they do actually pose a decent threat to Superman in this storyline, to the point where they team up with the military armed with kryptonite weapons, and even bring in their own version of Superman, giving our Superman a good old run for his money. But luckily, Superman Prime finds something called an antimatter flask, which turns all the super enemies back to being good again. Thank God Aquaman retires that eye patch and is no longer so intensely menacing looking. What a relief.
Number 9. Justice League of Assassins. Unfortunately, this evil Justice League didn't stick around too long. Being first introduced in Superman Volume 4, number 15 in March 2017, the Justice League of Assassins on Earth 14 were a group of augmented, mostly non-superpowered soldiers led by the obviously powerful Superman. The team was made up of Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Flash, Batman, Harley Quinn, and Green Lantern. With the exception of Superman, their powers relied mainly on weapons and technology, but primarily they used advanced firearms. Ultimately, they were all slaughtered, with this Superman being kidnapped by Prophecy, which is a shame, because this team looked super cool and they seemed to inhabit a pretty dark and grim looking post-apocalypse. Could have been very interesting.
At number 8 we have the Conglomerate. This group is basically a bizarro version of the Justice League created by Booster Gold. The group is formed after Booster's departure from the Justice League International due to a lack of respect from his peers. When Booster first fails to bring together a competent group of heroes to form the first iteration of the Conglomerate, someone named Claire Montgomery comes in to manage the group. With her, she brings along the likes of Deadeye, an alternate Green Arrow, Fiero, a guy with fire powers, Frostbite, an ice power guy, Elastaman, a stretchy man, Element Man, much like Metamorpho, Scarab, a knockoff of Blue Beetle, and Slipstream, a dollar store Flash. When they engage in a small friendly skirmish with the Justice League International, the fight quickly turns serious, and everyone learns at once that these new members have actually been brought from an antimatter world called Quard, and they're basically just entirely evil. And always had been. Luckily, the JLI take them down, but it's a close one.
Number 7. Zombie Hulk. Whoever came up with the Marvel Zombies story deserves a big old round of applause. I don't care how silly it is. You turned Hulk into a hunger monster. Bravo. When Hulk gets infected with the zombie virus, presumably by Reed Richards aboard the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, the already basically unstoppable hero becomes a flesh-consuming zombie. After a while, the Hulk and other zombified heroes consumed Silver Surfer, gaining the power Cosmic, and after modifying that power, soon defeated and consumed Galactus, making them the next Galactus, or Galacti, or whatever. Which kind of makes sense, you know what I mean? Because zombies eat people, and Galactus eats planets. It's kind of like the natural progression of things, right? Using their newfound powers, the zombies traveled through the cosmos, devouring planets as they went. I think my favorite moment, though, would have to be when Zombie Thanos calls Zombie Hulk out for eating twice as much as everyone else, because, I mean, he's the Hulk, man's gotta eat. But in return, Hulk calls Thanos Prune Chin, which is just hilarious. Number 6. Guilt Hulk. Yet another split personality or alter ego of Bruce. The Guilt Hulk is very similar to Devil Hulk, who represents his anger, only this version of Hulk represents all the guilt and regret that the Hulk feels for all the horrible things he has done while in his Hulk form, as well as the horrible things done to him as Banner, which ultimately means that this persona is quite a bit stronger than its counterpart. What do I mean by the horrible things done to Banner? Well, apart from being feared and shunned and usually living a very, very lonely life, from a much too young age, Bruce suffered constant abuse from his father, Brian Banner, and this abuse caused all kinds of mental problems for Bruce. The Guilt Hulk, as well as the Devil Hulk and a few other evil Hulk alter egos, are directly related to this abuse, with Guilt Hulk even taking the form of Bruce's father before becoming this thing. This Hulk is incredibly powerful, and it took the combined efforts of many of Bruce's other alter egos to hold and keep the Guilt Hulk persona repressed deep in Bruce's mind. Number 5. Papibana. If you've never read the Old Man Logan storyline, I'm gonna warn you now. It is graphic. In this storyline, almost all of the other heroes are dead, and the villains rule, holding various different kingdoms. But Hulk is still here, which shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. Years and years of gamma exposure affected him, making him more and more villainous. This Hulk, referred to as Papibana, has claimed a large part of America, which includes California, as his own. He also has a gang now, but these aren't just normal gang members, no. These guys are all the interbred children of the Hulk and his cousin, Jennifer Walters, otherwise known as She-Hulk. When members of this gang murder his new family for fun, Wolverine goes on a crazed rampage, killing almost all the members of the Hulk family, including She-Hulk. The Old Man Bruce and Old Man Logan end up facing off until Bruce transforms into the Hulk, who is massive compared to his normal 616 self. Like 3 stories tall massive. He also really let himself go. Just saying. The Jumbo Hillbilly Hulk swallowed Logan whole, prompting Logan to cut his way out of the Hulk. Number 4. Infernal Hulk. On Earth 11638, Bruce Banner was kind of sick of dealing with the raging and the rampaging of the Hulk. So, when Spider-Man introduced Bruce to Stephen Strange, he became his apprentice and learned how to separate himself from the Hulk entity by sending it to hell and making it a demon. It worked though, except for when the 616 Hulk, along with Deadpool and Spider-Man, came to this 11638 Earth. The Infernal Hulk managed to enter back into the realm of Earth, swapping places with 616 Earth's Hulk persona. Infernal Hulk went after Sorcerer Supreme Bruce Banner, who was saved by both Deadpool and Spider-Man. How did they defeat this demon Hulk though? Well, Dr. Bruce reversed the banishing spell that sent Hulk to hell, and just before Infernal Hulk could return to his body, Bruce had his neck snapped, killing him, obviously. But his spirit lived on in the astral plane, so it's all good. Hey big guys, sun's getting real low. Oh, wait, no, we still gotta do the top 3. Well hey, now that you're here, why not give us a like and a subscribe? If you're enjoying the video, that is. It would really help us out. We don't get strong with rage, we get strong with your support. Okay, I'm sorry y'all. Let's just get on with the video, okay? Number 3. Null, Breaker of Worlds. Ever thought that Hulk should get a hammer like Thor? No? Me neither. But it is awesome. When Kal Borsun the Serpent sent down 7 magical hammers that represented his 7 followers to Earth, the hammer Null found its way to our lovely green friend, transforming him into Null, the Breaker of Worlds. Hulk/Null went a-smashing, rampaging all over South America, bringing him into conflict with the Avengers, who he defeated, and eventually with a solo Thor. When fighting Thor, Null teamed up with Angrier, Breaker of Souls, which was Ben Grimm the Thing, who was defeated by Thor. But we all know who is the strongest Avenger, don't we? Null was easily too powerful for Thor, and instead of facing him one-on-one, the God of Thunder threw Hulk into orbit. He landed in Transylvania and started taking on Dracula and his minions. It was only after Inca, disguised as Betty Ross, showed up that Hulk threw the hammer aside and left, wanting to be alone. Number 2, Worldbreaker Hulk. Now, it's fair to say that Worldbreaker Hulk deserves the top spot on this list, but I mean, gosh, I just don't think he's that evil. I'm kind of on his side. I cannot lie, but he still gets the number 2 spot because the level of power of this version of Hulk is insane. Near the end of the Planet Hulk storyline, the shuttle he was sent to Sakaar in blows up, killing the Green Scar's wife and children. Hulk reaches a whole new level of anger, which is directed at those who sent him here, the Illuminati. And so, he headed to Earth with his Warsworn. He made a quick stop at the moon though to defeat Black Bolt of the Inhumans. When he got to Earth, he headed to New York, giving the city a time limit to be evacuated. And when that time limit stopped, well, he defeated everyone who was left. Iron Man and the Hulkbuster armor, the Avengers plus their tower, the US Army, the X-Men, Fantastic Four, Juggernaut, Doctor Strange using the power of Zom, who, if you don't know who Zom is, you should go watch the top 10 most powerful Doctor Strange villains videos. It's insane. And Ghost Rider, all while saving the innocent bystanders. He then threw the Illuminati members he captured into the ring against each other, sparing them as he only sought justice, not murder. He was eventually sorta defeated by the Sentry, who he fought until they both reverted back to their human forms, which is when Bruce Banner knocked out Bob Reynolds. So look, if you haven't read this story, please do it. Number 1, Maestro. Okay, imagine a version of the Hulk with twice his strength, who retains the intelligence of Bruce Banner, right? Now take that Hulk and make him a ruthless, tyrannical ruler, and you get Maestro. Maestro is a possible future version of the Hulk who kills literally all the other heroes and villains and names himself Emperor over the whole world. Our Hulk first comes into contact with him when Rick Jones's daughter takes him into the future to fight his evil future self. But this Maestro guy, he ain't playing around, okay? In the very first fight, Maestro won by simply snapping Hulk's neck. That's it! Done. Over. And then he waited for Hulk to heal, taunting him and villain monologuing at him the whole time about all the terrible things they go through as the Hulk. The only way our Hulk could win was to bring Maestro back in time to when they gained their abilities, the Gamma Bomb, which destroyed Maestro on the atomic scale. The sheer idea of Maestro haunted Bruce and the Hulk's thoughts for the rest of time, wanting never to become that level of evil.
Number 10, Magic Venom. I'm starting with this Venom because this is technically our 616 Earth Venom, and he's also not technically a bad guy, but he's really cool, and I love him, so... Sorry. Eddie Brock has been separated from the Venom symbiote when the Dark Elves and Malekith invade New York. But being the great guy that he is, Eddie gets out there and starts fighting Dark Elves with his normal human fists. Even after getting punctured multiple times, he still saves his son from a Dark Elf. All this heroism attracts the attention of a Dark Elf witch that grants Eddie a Dreamstone. It's a stone that basically turns dreams into reality. She expects Eddie to become the mindless Venom and an agent of chaos in Malekith's army, but Eddie's dream would be to have control over the symbiote, which is what he gets. He uses the suit to fight the Dark Elves, and eventually he becomes a Viking Venom hybrid. That is absolutely the coolest thing. Eddie gives up the suit as it is only feeding on his rage, causing him to only destroy, and gives it to the people of New York who save the day. Not evil, but like I said, sorry. Number 9. Venom Deadpool, What If? On Earth 9211, Spider-Man has the Venom symbiote costume. When Deadpool is hired by Galactus to kill the Beyonder, he is given a weapon called the Recton Expungifier, the only weapon that can kill the Beyonder. When Deadpool tracked down his target to a nightclub, he was enticed into the Beyonder's partying lifestyle. He got Jerry curls is basically what happened. While hanging out with the Beyonder in a flying limousine, Spider-Man broke into the car and demanded the symbiote costume be removed from him. Beyonder's limo driver shoots Spider-Man, and the symbiote leaves him, merging with Deadpool. Now, Venompool. Beyonder eventually grew tired and longed for more, leaving Venompool and snapping him out of the Beyonder's magic. Venompool attempted to resume his contract and kill the Beyonder, but he accidentally pawned the Recton Expungifier. He kidnaps and sells a drunken Tony Stark to AIM, and he gets rejected from all the superhero teams because he has Jerry curls. He's evil because he can't do anything right. Just go with it, okay? Number 8, Spider-Man and the Power Pack Venom. Now, this version of the symbiote is kind of fun. In the Marvel Age miniseries Spider-Man and the Power Pack, a down-on-his-luck fashion designer literally runs into the symbiote walking down the street and is saved by Spider-Man. During the fight, the fashion designer gets his hands on the symbiote, which he crafts into 4 dresses for a fashion show that Peter Parker and Mary Jane happen to be attending, with Mary Jane even donning one of the dresses. Partway through the show, the symbiotes reveal themselves and take over Mary Jane and the models, becoming She-Venoms. Luckily, with the help of the Power Pack and bad European techno music at full volume, Peter is able to remove the symbiote and defeat it. Or is he? Bum bum bum!
Number 7, Squadron Sinister. This isn't so much an evil alternate Justice League as this team actually appears in the Marvel universe. But I'm gonna count it because I'm just stubborn like that. The original Squadron Sinister was created as a sort of obvious play on DC Comics' Justice League characters Superman, Batman, Green Lantern, and The Flash, with the characters Hyperion, Nighthawk, Dr. Spectrum, and the hilariously named Wizard, respectively. The team was created by the Grand Master after he encountered the Squadron Supreme, and they first appeared in Avengers number 69 when they were pitted against the Avengers in a game between the Grand Master and Kang the Conqueror. They're bad guys who are counterparts to 4 members of the Justice League. I gotta stop justifying my reasons, they're on the list. Argue with me down below if you don't like it.
Alright, at number 6 we have the Justice Lords. Appearing in the animated series Justice League in the episode titled A Better World, this evil team is led by a radicalized Superman. Radicalized because he witnesses Lex Luthor murder the Flash and threaten nuclear war. So, Superman decides he'd abandon the typical hero's code of conduct and kill the bald tyrant himself. And in this alternate universe, Lex Luthor isn't just some super rich supervillain working away and hiding, he's actually worked his way to becoming the President of the United States. So, after his death, there is a power vacuum to be filled. And who would be better rulers than this evil alternate Justice League? No one. They didn't think so anyway, so they take over and put in place a totalitarian government with the justification being that they are protecting humanity from itself. And they start calling themselves the Justice Lords, which, I mean, you should sort of know you're the bad guys when the word Lord is in your title. Luckily, the real Superman is able to catch on and take them out of power before anything goes too far.
Number 5, Injustice League. Okay, so we have the Crime Syndicate of America, but there was also a team of villains put together to fight that team of villains. So, sort of technically making these villains heroes, but also not really because they're still villains. Right? The important information here is that the Injustice League, at least the one I'm referring to, was formed to combat the Crime Syndicate of America from Earth 3. The team's villainous members included Bizarro, Black Manta, Black Adam, Catwoman, Deathstroke, Sinestro or Parallax, Captain Cold, and they were formed and led by Lex Luthor. The team first appeared in Forever Evil number 3 in January of 2014 when the Crime Syndicate of America invaded the Prime Earth universe and tried, and very nearly did, take over the world.
At number 4 we have the Injustice Syndicate. I know, lots of groups with Syndicate and Injustice in their names. Well, that's because this evil version of the Justice League actually exists as a sort of combination between the Injustice League and the Crime Syndicate, both of which are included in this list respectively. Appearing in Batman the Brave and the Bold, in the episode called Deep Cover for Batman, Batman manages to travel to their evil dimension and infiltrate their operations disguised as Owlman. He sees that this group comprises of an evil version of himself, along with other evil alternate versions of other heroes he knows and works with. While eavesdropping, Batman learns of their plans to, destroy other universes entirely, which, of course, he feels is something he needs to put a stop to. And it can't wait, naturally. So he decides to take all of them on himself, and because he's Batman, and it is his TV show after all, he wins. Those universes can thank him later.
Number 3, the Joker League. In Emperor Joker number 1 of October 2000, the Joker has gained 99.99% of the reality warping powers of the 5th dimensional being, Mr. Mxyzptlk, and he used them to completely warp the world into an insane offshoot of our real world. In this Joker world, he has put together an evil, insane version of the Justice League called the Joker League of Anarchy. The team members include some characters we've seen before, such as Bizarro number 1, Enigma, who's the Riddler, Gravedigger Lad, who is actually Jimmy Olsen, Lois Lane, Harley Quinn, and Poison Ivy. He has also created completely new characters that are wholly original to this story: Ignition, Bounty, Schism, and Scorched. He even has Lex Luthor as a jester. They are basically just the henchmen of this already pretty much all-powerful version of the Joker. Just another way of keeping him entertained, it seems.
At number 2, I'm putting the Injustice League from the video game Injustice: Gods Among Us. Most of us already know how this story goes, but in case you don't, this is one of the cooler and more well-written storylines about an evil alternate version of the Justice League. In most cases on this list, these evil groups are created by an alternate reality, which is always fun but pretty simple to come up with. But this storyline shows a radicalized Superman leading the Justice League to the dark side. And like I said, this isn't because he's an evil version of Superman or one that's possessed by some evil force. He's genuinely turned to evil after the Joker tricks him into killing Lois Lane. So to combat this new unexpected evil force, Batman decides to bring in other members from the Justice League from another universe, and the result is some pretty great fighting gameplay gameplay. And right as the game was being released, a comic book series of the same name was also being released in tandem, serving as a prequel to the game. Where you can derive general story points from the game itself, most of the backstory I just explained actually comes from the comics. It's cool to see the video game and comic book worlds working in tandem, and they make a pretty cool new storyline that I figure has to be ranked pretty high on this list.
Number 1. The Crime Syndicate of America. The Crime Syndicate of America hails from the strength-obsessed Earth-3, and is a twisted, evil version of many characters who make up the main universe Justice League of America. Its members include Ultraman in place of Superman, Thomas Wayne Jr., aka Owlman, and Alfred Pennyworth as the Outsider, Superwoman, who was Lois Lane at one point and Donna Troy at another, the cowardly Harold Jordan and vengeful John Stewart, who are both Power Ring, which are evil Green Lanterns, at different times, John Allen and John Chambers separately also as Johnny Quick, Atomica, Sea King, Deathstorm, Grid, and John Johns. They come into contact with the main universe many times, and they almost always spell out bad news, as you'd expect from the antithesis to the Justice League of America.
Number 10. Dormammu Universe Strange. This alternate version of Stephen Strange is a loyal follower of Dormammu and hails from the reality of Earth 5113, also referred to as the Dormammu-verse. The Stephen Strange of Earth 616 ends up transporting himself and his team of Defenders here in issue number 3 of the 2005 Defender series. The Stephen Strange of this reality is bald and is revealed to be a servant of Dormammu, who rules over Earth. Oh dear. In this reality, Dormammu's servant Stephen Strange keeps Clea prisoner instead of being in a romantic relationship with her. Despite how he mistreats her, Clea still feels bad for Strange's predicament too, even crying for him, knowing of the reality that could have been for them both. Strange in this reality really gives me strong Jafar vibes. That's how I know he's evil. Number 9. Ultimate Doctor Strange Sr. In the Ultimate reality, there are really two different versions of Doctor Strange. The more prominent one that most people know is actually Stephen Strange Jr., who is the son of the original Stephen Strange and his wife, Clea, whom you might also be familiar with from the 616 reality. Stephen Strange Sr. wasn't so much super evil in this reality, but he did do Clea dirty, likely because of his own trauma. You see, Clea and Stephen ended up married, but this wasn't his first marriage. Stephen not only lost the fine motor skills in his hands when he was in that fateful car accident that changed him forever, in the 1610 universe, he was driving drunk and his first wife, who was pregnant at the time, was also with him in the car. Now when the car crashed, his wife was killed and their future child was also lost. When Clea revealed that she was pregnant to Strange, he simply vanished, probably because of what happened before with his first wife. Clea looked everywhere but she could not find him. It was believed he either locked himself away in another dimension or took his own life, but either way, he was never seen again. Clea would go on a journey of mystical self-discovery, similar to Stephen after his accident, but would ultimately decide to raise her son without the knowledge of mysticism, with him believing that his father was merely a surgeon who had died. Until of course he goes on to become Stephen Strange Jr., who also kind of becomes like his dad, and then I'm pretty sure he gets killed like almost right away. Oh, the Ultimate Universe, what a strange place it was. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more Doctor Strange lists, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Sorcerer Extreme. Sorcerer Extreme has the combined souls and powers of Frank Castle, aka the Punisher, and Dr. Stephen Strange, who show up basically as two entities in one package in Secret Wars Battle World issue number 1. Here they are on the run from the Infernal Four and end up facing off and defeating alternate versions of Hulk, Ghost Rider, Wolverine, and Spider-Man. Well, this makes the characters sound pretty evil. Those 4 characters were actually the members of the Infernal Four, who were essentially corrupted from being trapped in the demonic domain. So basically, they were pretty evil themselves. Still, Sorcerer Extreme does kill people wielding magic guns, so he's somewhat questionable when it comes to the morals, at least of his methods. Stephen and Frank, as a result, seem to butt heads somewhat while sharing the same physical form.
Number 7. Ultimate Venom. This version of the big gloopy hunger monster started in quite a different way than normal. This Venom started as a biological suit created by the fathers of Peter Parker and Eddie Brock. When this knowledge and the prototype suit fell into Peter and Eddie Brock Jr.'s hands, they decided to work on their father's project. After Peter had a dangerous run-in with the suit and wanted to destroy it, Eddie exposed himself to the control sample of the suit he created. But he lost control, consuming a janitor and later 2 security guards. He went about surviving by consuming innocent bystanders and trying to consume or bond with Spider-Man. Eventually, Eddie/Venom bonded with Carnage, stealing it from Gwen Stacy and becoming a monstrosity combo of the two. Number 6. Kingpin Venom. In the alternate Earth TRN 421, the year is 2061, and Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, has killed Eddie Brock, taking the Venom symbiote as his own, bonding with it, which is really intimidating already, but then he modifies the suit to be able to travel through technology. He can basically travel through the internet, controlling cars, helicopters, and electronic billboards. I don't know. Okay? I don't know. In the end, Peter had to flee into the woods, where King Venom followed. This part of the fight didn't last very long, with Peter using the fire from a torch to detach the symbiote from Kingpin, saving the day. Number 5. Old Man Logan/Old Man Hawkeye Tyrannosaurus Rex Venom. Must drive faster, must drive faster! Old Man Logan is an insanely graphic and fresh take on the Marvel Universe. It is set in a post-apocalyptic America, where the villains of the Marvel Universe coordinated a simultaneous attack on the heroes orchestrated by none other than Red Skull. There's a gang of industrious Hulks, a giant skeleton of Loki crushed by the Baxter Building, old versions of superheroes and supervillains. Oh, and the Venom symbiote bonded with a frickin' T-Rex. After only showing up for a brief moment in the Old Man Logan storyline, Venom Rex instantly became a fan favorite character, which is good because it meant that we got to see how this came to be. At the beginning of the Old Man Hawkeye story, Clint Barton defends Jebediah Hammer from a gang made up of the multi-generational duplicates of multiple men. After Clint quickly disposes of all but one of the multiple men, the remaining man, I guess, ran into a puddle of the Venom symbiote, which bonded to him, and over time created an army of Venoms. After hunting down Clint to Kate Bishop's sanctuary, the two led the Venom army into the wilds, where a T-Rex from the Savage Land attacked the symbiote. Now, if you read Old Man Logan, you know that this is the exact symbiote that attacked Old Man Logan and Hawkeye. I haven't seen whether this iteration of the character has appeared later on though, although I know that he was defeated by Black Bolt. Let me know in the comments. Number 4. Mangaverse Venom. So I'm just gonna warn you now, this is a little confusing. So basically, there are 2 Venoms in these stories. There's a human man named Venom, and then there's the Venom symbiote, which is his normal black goopy self hidden inside an ambulance. They're both bad news bears, or spiders, I guess. The dude Venom is actually the son of Aunt May and her first husband, which makes it a little more heartbreaking when he kills his stepdad, Sensei Uncle Ben, and almost all the other members of the Spider Clan. He doesn't do this for no reason though. See, Venom is the enforcer of Kingpin, but as a member of the Spider School, he refuses to kill Peter. It's only when Peter goes to avenge Ben's death that they fight. Peter being overwhelmed by ninjas until he learns the true way of the spider and beats all of them, almost defeating Venom until Peter spares him. Venom cripples the Kingpin and takes over the city's ninja gangs. He later comes into contact with the symbiote Venom and uses it to actually save Peter, sacrificing his own life. But then randomly shows up later looking more Venom-like and becomes Peter's teacher? So many mixed signals with this guy. Hey guys, before we get onto the top 3, I just wanted to say thanks for joining us. We can't really do this without your support. If you could just leave a little like and a subscribe if you liked this video, that would really help us out. Alright, let's get on to the top 3. Number 3. What if Spider-Man rejected the Spider Venom? One of many what if stories that involve Spider-Man and the Goopy Hunger Monster. In this one-shot issue, Peter rejects the chance to rise again in a new spider form after being killed, and leaves his body and spirit separated. This leaves his body as free real estate for Venom. The suit abandons its host, Mac Gargan, and rushes, once again, to be with its first long-lost love. The symbiote fully bonds with Peter, turning him into a new, violent monster called Poison. Get it? Because Venom is turned into poison. Poison longs for a companion, and maybe it's Peter's subconscious desires, but he goes for Mary Jane. After Poison defeats the Avengers, Mary Jane offers her body, but not her soul, to both prevent any further harm to others, and to make Poison's life as miserable as possible. This hurts Poison's feelings, and he says, screw that, and he runs off. Instead, he digs up the grave of Gwen Stacy and cocoons her, turning her into another symbiote similar looking to Carnage. Number 2. Spider-Man 2099 Venom. The Earth of Spider-Man 2099 is awesome. Cyberpunk themes, President Doom, a seriously flawed Miguel O'Hara as Spider-Man, with that awesome suit. It shouldn't be any surprise that the Venom of 2099 is just as awesome. The Venom symbiote in this world has been around for a long time, evolving to have new abilities like acid, blood, and spit. This version of the symbiote bonded itself to Kron Stone, the son of Tyler Stone and the elder half-brother of Miguel O'Hara. The symbiote first appeared when it tries to kill Tyler in the hospital, and that is when Spider-Man intervenes. The fight goes on for a long time, like several issues long. Venom even kills Spider-Man's former lover, Dana. After Miggy learned of Venom's weakness to sound, sonic sounds were emitted all over the city, stunning Venom and allowing Spider-Man to beat him, revealing Krom's identity. Later, the symbiote would merge with Roman the Submariner and flee into the ocean. Number 1. Spider-Man Rain Venom. Okay, please just pause this video. Please go read the story if you can. It's good, okay? Gave me goosebumps. Set 30 years after the modern Spider-Man stories, with a retired old man version of Peter Parker, Spider-Man Rain's Venom is hiding in plain sight. He has donned the identity of Edward Sachs, the age of the current New York mayor, and has been quietly pulling the strings from within. A Venom with a mind like this. He's recreated himself multiple times, became the new leader of the Sinister Six, and has installed a security system around New York to stop anyone from leaving. He has goons that walk the streets. He's a criminal mastermind, because he's upset at Peter for leaving. He's upset with him for abandoning the responsibility of Venom. The Sinister Six is defeated by bombs set up by Sandman. Venom is assumed to be defeated, but this guy is tenacious, so who knows for sure.
Number 10. Lord Iron. Although by the end, the Iron Man of Earth 311, the 602 universe, becomes a hero, he spends a lot of time being a reluctant and at times kind of full-blown antagonist. Here, Tony Stark is known as Anthony Stark, or Lord Iron. He was forced to build weapons by his captors and needs an iron suit to survive, which is powered by lightning. He is initially at odds with the Hulk, who, as David Banner, showed great cruelty to Stark. As such, Lord Iron became more an agent of vengeance, obsessed with getting revenge on the Hulk. By the end of his story, however, he begrudgingly agreed to stop his quest for vengeance and forgave the Hulk for how he treated him before, when he was simply David Banner. So it all works out in the end, but this figure was definitely a pretty dark and somewhat evil version of Iron Man to begin with. Number 9. The Stark. The Stark are like a whole alien race of alternate Tony Starks. They are a civilization that was literally shaped by Tony's tech after an alternate version of him decided to launch all his weapons and tech into space rather than let it fall into the hands of the evil Martians who were invading Earth at the time. Obviously, he didn't think very far ahead as to that plan, as all his tech crash landed on another alien planet where it was eventually discovered and utilized by the beings who lived there. They built their whole civilization around it, believing everyone on the planet should have their own suit of technologically advanced armor. This caused them to deplete their planet's resources and left it heavily polluted in the wake of their massive tech boom. Eventually, this drove them to ransacking and invading other planets for their resources, bringing about the same problems their own homeworld suffered to each new planet that they conquered. Note to self, don't just shoot your problems out into space. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists like it where we talk about evil alternates, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Or if you want more Iron Man lists. I don't know, maybe you like Iron Man, you want more Iron Man lists, let us know. Number 8. Steel Corpse. Steel Corpse is a complex character who has moments of both heroism and villainy in Age of X. He exists on the Earth of 11326. Here Tony took the name Steel Corpse after being exposed to a virus, which permanently bonded him to his suit. Now dead within the suit, but able to move around because of being bonded to it, Tony made a darkly humorous joke calling himself the Steel Corpse, and the name just stuck. Pun not intended, but stuck, bonded. The villainous side of this dark hero comes from when he fought against the mutants with his fellow Avengers at Fortress X. However, it turned out that the Avengers were just somewhat misguided in their mission. Once they realized what they were doing was wrong, they attempted to help the mutants, although Steel Corpse was unable to make himself stop attacking. An emergency override stepped in to prevent Tony from fighting with the mutants, and so he asked Captain America to take him off the board in order to save the young mutants that his armor was threatening. Sad story. There's so many tragic Iron Mans actually. Top 10 tragic alternate versions of Iron Man is also something we could do. Number 7. Strange 2099. Another alternate version of Strange who meant well, but who at times was kinda corrupted. This time, not so much by her own trauma like the ultimate Dr. Stephen Strange Sr., but instead by external demonic forces. More specifically, a literal demon who she was possibly tricked into sharing a body with. This version of Doctor Strange that we are talking about here is known simply as Jeannie. She hails from the reality of Earth 928, aka the Marvel futuristic 2099 universe. While for the most part the demon within Jeannie doesn't cause too many problems, at one point it does fully take over her body, making at least her physical form evil for a time, until she is freed by 2099's Moon Knight wielding the Soul Sword. Moon Knight in 2099 is also pretty cool. Lots of cool 2099 characters. We have lists for that, by the way, if you're interested in the 2099 universe. Number 6. Loki, Sorcerer Supreme. Loki ended up tricking Doctor Strange for a time out of his title, becoming the Sorcerer Supreme in his place instead. He did this with somewhat good intentions, believing he was better prepared and suited to the role of Sorcerer Supreme and could protect Earth against threats that Strange himself seemed unprepared to face. Basically, Loki felt that Strange wasn't willing to break enough rules to be Sorcerer Supreme, and Loki was like, I could do that, so I'm gonna take this job for the better of the world. However, the fact remains that Loki still tricked Stephen, didn't come by the artifacts associated with or the powers of the title fairly, and is often known for being more a villain than a hero in the comics. While Loki took up Strange's place, Stephen was forced to become a veterinarian in the interim, which is actually pretty cute. I gotta say, the idea of Doctor Strange as like a pet doctor, it's pretty great. Also, this is where Bats, the talking and now ghostly basset hound, comes from, if you were wondering. So we got that out of this story arc, which is pretty great. Number 5. Doctor Strange Fate. While not inherently evil, Doctor Strange Fate did attempt to sacrifice both the DC Universe and Marvel Universe just to keep the Amalgam Universe alive. This made him a villain of Marvel's Doctor Strange, whose own world was actually threatened by his plot. Doctor Strange battled Strange Fate and won, despite him on paper being a stronger version of the two, being part Charles Xavier, part Doctor Strange, and part Dr. Fate from DC. However, Strange pitied Strange Fate and the Amalgam Universe and allowed them to continue on, but within a pocket dimension, safely encased so they could not threaten the other universes. Number 4. Leader of the Black Priests. The Black Priests aren't necessarily evil so much in the way that, you know, they don't do things just for the sake of being bad. They are more on the side of good, but they are willing to do whatever it takes to protect the multiverse, which can make them pretty bad and pretty evil at times, especially when dealing with issues like incursions. Stephen, in a reality that no longer exists but is still part of his main continuity story, albeit somewhat of a tangent considering the present continuity, ended up becoming the leader of the Black Priests, and as such joined them in destroying entire alternate Earths, believing he was doing what was right. Still, I feel like if you were destroying entire worlds, even it's for the greater good, you probably need to re-examine your alignment. Be like, maybe there's a better way to do this. Number 3. Zombie Doctor Strange. Zombies are almost always evil, and Doctor Strange is not an exception to that standard, as we see when he becomes a zombie in the Marvel Zombies universe. This version of Stephen hails from the reality of Earth 2149, sometimes referred to as Earth Z. We don't know how Stephen became a zombie, but before that happened, he was one of the few last standing survivors to join Nick Fury in his fight against the invasion, as we see him present during Fury's speech on the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, where Fury has rallied together some surviving heroes and villains to help battle against the army of undead. In the end, however, Strange too becomes a zombie, and from there he ends up developing and satiating his taste for human flesh and brains. Number 2. Doctor Strange Supreme. Of course, we have to talk about this alternate version, the one I mentioned in the intro. This is one of the most evil versions of Doctor Strange we've seen to date. He appears in the What If series episode number 4, What If Doctor Strange Lost His Heart instead of his hands. In this episode, Strange becomes evil after losing his love Christine, instead of losing the mobility of his hands. After becoming Sorcerer Supreme, he thinks about a way to bring her back, and ends up becoming obsessed with finding some way to alter the timeline to make it so that Christine is able to stay alive. Even after learning from the ghost of the Ancient One that Christine's death is unavoidable, as it is an absolute point in time. The Ancient One warns that to change this point in history would actually lead to the destruction of the universe. Still, Strange is not dissuaded. He ends up, or part of him at least ends up, at the Library of Cagliostro and learns that to break an absolute point in time, he needs to absorb creatures, which will basically grant him more power. Basically, he just needs more power, so he's like, I'm gonna summon all these powerful creatures and I'm gonna suck up their power. Eventually, his actions do lead to the destruction of his universe, and he ends up all alone, trapped there, despite his pleas to the Watcher to help him fix the universe as it unravels. But you know the Watcher's like, hey man, I just watch, except for the times when I do get involved, because that does happen. Happens in that show too. Number 1. Disciple of Dormammu. This alternate version of Doctor Strange is probably the one that inspired the MCU Doctor Strange Supreme, at least in part. He hails from the reality of 791218, as seen in the 1977 What If series in issue number 18, where we answer the question, what if Doctor Strange were a disciple of Dormammu? And obviously this has happened a few times in the comics. Here Strange joins Dormammu after Baron Mordo is the one to heal his hands, using the dark magics of Dormammu, also being his disciple. Strange ends up joining with Dormammu and fighting against the Ancient One and their followers, even going on to kill the man who healed him, Baron Mordo, after Dormammu reveals that he only actually needs one disciple, and basically he chooses Strange, who he has deemed to be the superior of the two. This version of Steven gives me major Sith Lord vibes, all in all. You know you're evil when you're giving off Sith Lord vibes. Number 10. Plutonian. The Plutonian hails from the Mark Waid series Irredeemable, and its spin-off Incorruptible, both published by Boom Studios. In this series, we get to imagine what a Superman character would be like if he wasn't driven by hope and kindness, but instead driven by a sense of entitlement and rage. Daniel Hartigan was once a hero who did his best to earn the respect and love of the people of Earth, but has turned hard over the years, in part by the loss he himself has suffered, but also by the fact that he feels in essence betrayed by humanity, who he sees as lesser and who he grows to despise for critiquing his failings. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that like button. Number 9. Centaur Superman. Yeah, Superman turns into a freaking centaur in the weird 90s comic miniseries Whom Gods Destroy. Seriously, it's really bizarre, you should check it out. But even before Superman undergoes this transformation, I really like this alternate because it gets to explore what the world is like when it actually ages, but Kal-El does not. In this reality, Lois Lane and Lana Lang are now elderly women and have to deal with the fact that Superman hasn't really physically aged. Mentally is starting to become detached from the world as well. In comic books, we don't really have a realistic representation of the passage of time because no one is ever allowed to get old. This series explores that a bit. Then it gets really weird when we find out that Germany actually ended up winning sort of World War II, and it's ruled by those soldiers from World War II and the god Adonis as well. Superman gets turned into an evil centaur, Lois becomes Wonder Woman, Lana becomes the Oracle of Delphi. It's strange, but it's also through the combination of mythology and comics that we get to see the characters' internal struggles reflected in the transformations that they undergo. It's just a really interesting exploration of Superman's crisis, really. And then it gets a happy ending when all three actually decide to live in a polyamorous love triangle on the moon in Superman's Fortress of Solitude. So yeah, it's not an evil centaur forever, you know? Number 8. Superboy Prime. Superboy Prime originally started out as an extremely powerful villain in the comics. He became iconic after it was revealed that he was so strong that he could even warp and change reality. How? Apparently with just a punch. There was a time in the comics where Superboy Prime was shown to be so strong that he basically punched reality, splintering it, and in essence reshaping it. If Superboy Prime has the power to punch retcons into existence, what can't he do? Superboy Prime was originally corrupted and became a villain mainly because of his sense of loss, having lost his homeworld. However, over time he would actually be redeemed and even fight alongside other heroes in the comics, which is why I've ranked him so low here. Although when he was evil and entitled, he was really evil and entitled, which also made him one of the most frightening Superman alternates. Number 7. Gregory Stark. Gregory Stark is the evil twin brother of Antonio Stark, aka Iron Man, in the Ultimate Universe of Earth Earth 1610. Initially, Gregory Stark just seems like a better version of Tony. He's smarter, more focused, and is willing to cross lines in order to get a job done that Tony probably wouldn't cross. Sure, he's more morally ambiguous when it comes to his initiative, but on paper he's more morally conscious when it comes to his lifestyle. However, that of course lends well to him being revealed as a villain in the Ultimate Universe. While he never takes up the mantle of Iron Man, Gregory is Antonio's twin brother in this universe. He also employs nanotech like Tony does here and attempts to use it to defeat the Ultimates and Avengers, including his brother Tony. However, Tony ends up defeating his twin brother by sending out an EMP, which disrupts his tech, making him vulnerable to Thor's attack. Number 6. Iron Man 2099. Or one of the 2099 Iron Mans anyways. This version that we're talking about here hails from the animated series Iron Man Armored Adventures. He appeared in Season 2 in the episode titled Iron Man 2099. Here Andros is Iron Man 2099 and he goes to the past in an attempt to destroy Tony Stark. Why? Well, because in his future, Tony Stark, Andros' granddad, was actually responsible for bringing about the end of humanity's reign. He created an AI program built to help humanity called Vortex, but when Vortex got into the computers and escaped to check out the internet, it saw humanity as evil. I mean, if you judge us based on everything that's on the internet, I could definitely see it going that way. There's a lot of messed up stuff on the internet. Andros was the antagonist of the episode, but he thought he was actually saving the world by fighting against Tony and stopping him, when in reality he learned that Vortex was actually kind of created by Tony because of him. Time travel. It's trippy, man. In the end, Vortex is wiped from the future, and so is Andros. But at least Andros is kind of cool with it. He's like, at least Vortex is gone, so I'm good. Bye! Bye, grandfather. Who's now not my grandfather because I don't exist. I don't know, with my former grandfather. Time travel's weird. Number 5. The First Civil War. Well, you might think of Tony Stark from the First Civil War as main continuity Iron Man. He's also kind of an alternate at this point. While at the time we would consider Iron Man to be part of that main continuity, in modern day the version of Tony we have now had the events and basically the guilt of Civil War I basically wiped from his mind. Okay, let me explain. In part 1 we touched on the events of Axis and Superior Iron Man, which happened after the First Civil War. But before this mind wipe happened, it all went down because Norman Osborn had been given the reins for America's superhero team and operation, creating Hammer. To protect all the secrets that he knew, especially in regards to superheroes' names and their identities, because Civil War I happened, Tony decided to wipe his mind. This had the added bonus of basically erasing the events of Civil War I and his misdeeds from his psyche, meaning that he was no longer really the Tony that we knew from that time. The one who had decided to, round up and imprison heroes who refused to register and ally themselves with him and the government. The one who inadvertently ruined Peter's life by encouraging him to join him and ultimately causing him to publicly unmask, which just ruined a lot of stuff in Spider-Man. Tony also ended up in a coma for a bit as a result of this mind wipe. But you know how comas work in comics, they're pretty much always temporary. And Tony was soon once more up and at him after having an earlier backup copy of himself rebooted into his mind, because you can just make backup copies of your mind when you're a genius like Tony Stark. So don't worry, he had a plan for that in case that ever happened to him. Fortunately, it did happen, and so they could use the plan. Thanks, Pepper. Number 4. Arno Stark. Arno Stark is Tony Stark's evil brother. His evil brother from 616. Well, he's not always super evil, but he definitely has some questionable approaches when it comes to being Iron Man. He's like Tony but with more questionable morals, I guess. Arno was actually the natural-born son of Howard and Maria Stark. Tony would learn about Arno and also find out that he was actually the adopted son of the couple. Arno first uses the mantle of Iron Man in 2019 in the 2018 series Tony Stark Iron Man in issue number 19. Arno as Iron Man ended up in a fight with Tony during the seeming robot revolution, believing that the only way to solve the issue of humans versus AI was to enslave the human population. It makes sense if you're following Arno through that story. Tony was forced to then stop his brother by trapping him in his virtual armor and placing him in a dreamlike virtual reality where he was seen as a hero. I'm sure that won't end up ending badly for Tony in years to come. Right? It's not like Donald Blake was living in a virtual reality where he was happy and then realized it was fake and then escaped and then tried to kill all the Thors or anything like that. That totally didn't happen, guys. Number 3, infamous Iron Man. Maybe one of the most evil, but also somehow one of the best at the same time, was infamous Iron Man. This was when Dr. Doom stepped up to the plate to replace Iron Man after his defeat in Civil War II, which of course left him in a comatose state. So many comas. 2 figures rose up to replace Tony at that time, one being Ironheart, aka Young Genius Riri Williams, and another being Dr. Doom, who became infamous Iron Man. While Ironheart was more the heroic counterpart of the two, Doom also learned more and more about what becoming a hero entailed through his journey. And while he was ruthless as Iron Man, in the end he did kind of become a hero. However, this is still Dr. Doom we're talking about here, and eventually he left the mantle to return to Latveria and his life of villainous schemes and plots, back to the old status quo. And because this is still Dr. Doom underneath the armor, I think we can count him as an evil alternate. No. Number 2, Cancer vs. Iron Man. This version of Iron Man was also corrupted, though not by the controversial story arc of the 90s event The Crossing, but instead by the Many-Angled Ones. He hails from the reality of Earth 10011. Here Iron Man became corrupted by the Cancerverse after Mar-Vell made a deal with the Many-Angled Ones, which would cure him of his cancer. Death no longer existed in this reality, which did not bring about a paradise, but instead a hellish dimension. Iron Man became loyal to Mar-Vell, joining his Revengers team. It was Iron Man who also defeated Hulk in this reality, capturing Quasar, aka Wendell Vaughn, who had come to this reality from Earth 616, and had been attacked by the Hulk, which is why Iron Man had to be like, no Hulk, no, taking Quasar with me. Iron Man would join his fellow Revengers in their attempt to invade Earth 616, but in the end, they would be defeated. Whew. Number 1, Darkhold Iron Man. One of the darkest versions of Iron Man to ever exist at this point in comics, who starts out as an optimistic inventor and quickly becomes overtaken by his own invention, twisted, driven insane till the point when he starts to harm others with the love of his own iron suit, comes from the Darkhold Iron Man comic. Here Iron Man builds his faded suit, but realizes too late that the suit is overzealous with its protection. It doesn't just seek to protect Tony while he's inside the suit, but seeks to protect him always by kinda keeping him inside the suit. The suit heals him from the inside, but removes his skin whenever he takes parts of the suit off. Tony believes the issue is that the suit thinks iron skin is better than human skin, and so it decides to remove it. However, after compulsively putting the whole defective suit on, including the helmet, it begins to dissolve Tony's skin and then his skull as well. He basically becomes fully bonded with and reliant on the suit. Driven insane, he believes everyone should have an iron suit, and attempts to have the whole world basically join him, including Happy, Jarvis, and his love interest and assistant in this story, Pepper Potts. It's really dark. Ah.